There's a moment in Season 4 of Teen Titans where Robin spends 3 consecutive days fighting Slade. No sleep, no food, destroying everything around him, attacking his own teammates, pushing himself so far past the edge of reason that Raven has to go inside his mind just to pull him back. And when she does, when she finally reaches him inside that darkness, she finds something that stops the entire episode cold. There is no Slade. There never was. Robin had been fighting a hallucination for 3 days. A ghost made entirely out of his own obsession. A villain his own mind had constructed because Robin, without an enemy to consume him, didn't know what to do with himself. Slade wasn't even in the episode, and he still won it. Because 4 seasons earlier, the first time Slade looked at a 16-year-old in a red and green costume and said, "You and I are more alike than you'll ever admit," nobody believed him. Robin rejected it. The Titans rejected it. The audience rejected it. And then Robin spent the next 4 seasons proving him right, one breakdown at a time. Slade was right. He was right from the first episode. He just said it in the wrong voice for anyone to hear it. To understand what Slade was actually seeing, you have to understand what Slade was in Teen Titans. Not the action, not the fights, the reading. Slade Wilson is the most intelligent character in the entire show. Not the most powerful, not the most dangerous, though he is both of those things too. The most intelligent, specifically in the sense that he understands people with a precision that the show never stops demonstrating. He reads Tara before anyone else does. He reads Raven's fear before she admits it herself. He reads every single Titan's psychological architecture and files it away for operational use. But the one he reads deepest, earliest, and most accurately is Robin. From their very first interaction, Slade isn't threatened by Robin. He's interested. And in a show full of villains who want to destroy the Titans, Slade is the only one who wants to recruit one of them. Not because Robin is the most powerful, he isn't. Not because Robin is the most useful tactically, there are better options. Because Slade sees something in Robin that Robin can't see in himself yet. A mirror. Not a perfect one. Slade is not arguing that Robin will become evil. He's making a more specific, more unsettling claim. That the same internal architecture that made Slade who he is, the obsession, the refusal to stop, the willingness to go further than anyone around you thinks is acceptable, that same architecture is already fully operational inside Dick Grayson. He says it directly, repeatedly, in language so clear it shouldn't be dismissible. You and I are not so different. You have such fierce devotion to your cause. You can't stop, Robin. That's what makes you remarkable, and that's what makes you mine. Nobody wanted to hear it, so nobody did. Here's what the show gives us before Slade ever appears. Dick Grayson. And Teen Titans Robin is Dick Grayson. Whatever the show leaves ambiguous. Came from the circus. He watched his parents fall. He was taken in by a man who turned grief into purpose, and purpose into obsession, and called it heroism. By the time he's leading the Teen Titans at 16, he has already spent years being shaped by the most controlled, most driven, most psychologically sealed off person in the DC universe. He didn't just learn Batman's techniques, he absorbed Batman's relationship to the mission. Watch the first season of Teen Titans with that in mind, and you see it immediately. Robin is the one who pushes hardest, the one who trains when everyone else is sleeping, the one who takes every defeat personally in a way that goes past professional and lands somewhere closer to identity. When the Titans lose, Robin doesn't regroup, he fixates. The mission doesn't end when the fight ends. It follows him into the tower, into his room, into every quiet moment the show gives him. His teammates are kids learning to be heroes. Robin is something slightly different. A kid who was already trained to treat the mission as the meaning, and is now trying to function as a person around that foundation. The Titans don't see it as a problem. They see it as leadership. Robin's intensity is framed as an asset, the reason they win, the reason they push through, the reason they survive fights that should end them. Slade sees it as a key. When Slade first makes his argument that Robin has the makings of something darker inside him, the dismissal is total. From Robin himself, it's immediate and furious. Every time Slade draws the comparison, Robin doesn't engage with it. He rejects it physically, through the fight, through the refusal to stop swinging, through the volume of his own voice. The emotional intensity of the rejection is, of course, its own kind of evidence, but nobody is calibrated to read it that way in the moment. From the Titans, the framing is simple. Slade is the villain, Robin is the hero. Everything Slade says about Robin is manipulation designed to destabilize him, which is true. Slade is absolutely using these observations tactically, but the show and the fan base made a mistake that the reference scripts would recognize immediately. They judged the motive and used it to dismiss the accuracy. Slade's claim being manipulative doesn't make it wrong. Those are two separate questions. The audience split the same way. In 2003 and 2004, when The Apprentice arc aired and Slade made his most direct case, fan discourse treated the "you're like me" argument as a villain trope. The evil mentor who tries to corrupt the hero by telling him he was always corrupt. Classic. Expected. Wrong by definition because Slade is the bad guy. Even critics who praised the show's psychological depth tended to read the Robin-Slade dynamic as temptation successfully resisted, not as prophecy in the process of being fulfilled. They were watching the wrong arc. Because here's what Teen Titans was actually documenting across 4 seasons, whether the audience was tracking it or not. Red X. Season 2. Robin builds a criminal alter ego, steals from his own team, lies to everyone who trusts him, and goes undercover without authorization because he decided the mission required it. No discussion, no consent from his teammates, a unilateral decision made in exactly the way Slade would make it. Alone, controlled, convinced that the ends justified the operational choices. The Titans are hurt. They feel betrayed. And Robin's response to their hurt is the most revealing moment in the entire arc. He acknowledges that it was wrong, but he doesn't actually believe it was the wrong call. The regret is about the damage to the team, not about the decision itself. That's not a hero who made a mistake. That's Slade's internal logic, running on Robin's hardware. The Season 2 obsession. After the Apprentice arc ends, Slade is gone, presumably dead, and Robin, who should be relieved, who by every narrative logic should be moving forward, cannot let it go. He keeps the case files. He keeps investigating. He keeps looking for proof that Slade is still out there because the alternative, that the obsession has no object anymore, is somehow worse. His teammates notice. They say something. Robin doesn't hear it. The mission had replaced the enemy. The obsession was no longer about Slade specifically. It was about having something to be obsessed with. Haunted. Season 4. A dust-covered mask triggers a chemical hallucination, and Robin spends 3 days in a deteriorating spiral, fighting a Slade that only he can see, refusing to admit what's happening, refusing to accept help, pushing himself until his body starts shutting down. Think about what that episode is actually showing. Robin, without external validation of his enemy, without anyone else confirming the threat is real, without any objective evidence, continues. Because stopping is not something his internal architecture knows how to do. Slade named that quality in Season 1, called it remarkable, called it the thing that made Robin his. He was describing a feature, not a flaw. The feature just happened to be the same one that would eventually nearly kill him. The episode that made Slade's argument impossible to ignore wasn't a fight, it was a conversation. Late Season 4. Robin and Slade facing the end of the world together. Temporary, tactical, deeply uncomfortable for everyone involved. And in that alliance, something happens that the earlier seasons couldn't allow. Robin stops rejecting the comparison and starts sitting with it. Not accepting it, not agreeing with Slade, but for the first time in the entire run of the show, he stops screaming over it. And what comes out in that silence is the most honest moment in Robin's arc. He asks Slade, essentially, whether it's possible to have this architecture, this drive, this refusal, this obsession, and still be something other than what Slade became. Whether the qualities Slade identified can exist without the destination Slade arrived at. Slade, characteristically, doesn't give him a clean answer, because the question Robin is actually asking is the one Alfred had been asking Bruce for 30 years. Can you be built this way and still be okay? Can the mission coexist with the person? Slade had seen the answer play out in his own life. He knew what the architecture produced when it ran unchecked. He'd been trying to tell Robin since episode 1. The discourse, when Haunted aired, split along predictable lines, but with more nuance than the earlier seasons had produced. The defensive read, Robin's obsession is proof of heroic dedication. He fights through a chemical hallucination because he refuses refuses to abandon his city. That's not a character flaw. That's exactly the quality that makes him the leader. The Titans survived because Robin is built the way he's built, and the cost of that building is worth paying. The uncomfortable read. A 16-year-old spent 3 days in a deteriorating, self-destructive spiral because his psychological architecture couldn't process the absence of an enemy. His teammates tried to help him, and he refused. He physically attacked the people trying to keep him alive, and when it was over, the lesson the show seemed to draw was not Robin needs to address this, but Robin pushed through and survived. The same pattern Alfred would have recognized. The cost acknowledged, the structure unchanged. Slade's defenders in the discourse, and there were more of them after Haunted than there had been after the Apprentice arc, weren't defending Slade's methods. They were defending his read. The argument wasn't that Robin should have become Slade's apprentice, it was that Slade had correctly identified something real, and 4 seasons of evidence had made it undeniable. The two positions have never fully resolved in the Teen Titans fandom. They probably never will, because both require you to decide how much you trust a villain's ability to tell the truth. The vindication doesn't come in a single moment. It comes in the full shape of Robin's arc across the series. By the end of Teen Titans, Dick Grayson will eventually become Nightwing. In the broader DC continuity, the version of this story that the show was always pointing toward. He leaves the Robin identity. He steps out from under Batman's shadow. He builds something that is more fully his own. But the Teen Titans version of Dick Grayson has to earn that transition the hard way, through exactly the gauntlet Slade predicted. Every season tests whether the darkness Slade named can be carried without consuming him. Every season, Robin gets closer to the edge before pulling back. The show never lets him fall over it. That's the heroic version of the story. But here's what Slade's vindication actually looks like. Robin doesn't escape the darkness by defeating it. He escapes it by learning to hold it consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what it is. He has to become fluent in the exact quality Slade identified: the obsession, the refusal, the willingness to go further than anyone else, and learn to run it instead of letting it run him. That is not the journey of someone who proved Slade wrong. That is the journey of someone who proved Slade right and then figured out what to do about it. The difference between Robin and Slade isn't the architecture. Slade named that correctly from the jump. The difference is what Robin chose to build on top of it, and that choice, made consciously, fought for across 4 seasons, only became possible because Robin eventually stopped rejecting the mirror Slade held up and started looking into it honestly. You can't make a conscious choice about something you refuse to acknowledge exists. Slade forced the acknowledgement. That's the whole of his contribution to Robin's story, and it turns out that contribution was the most important one Robin ever received. Here's what the Robin and Slade dynamic is really about. The most dangerous thing a villain can do to a hero isn't defeat them. It isn't corrupt them. It's see them clearly, accurately, without the flattering frame the hero uses to understand themselves, and then say it out loud. Because if the villain is right, the hero has 2 options: reject the mirror entirely and keep running the unchecked architecture, or look into it, survive what they see, and build something conscious out of it. Robin almost chose the first option 4 times across 4 seasons. Haunted is the closest he comes to losing entirely. 3 days of fighting his own psychology while it dismantled him from the inside, with no external enemy to justify the cost. Slade's claim wasn't malicious. It was diagnostic, and the reason nobody wanted to hear it, in the fiction, in the fan base, in every piece of critical writing about the show, is the same reason Alfred's warnings went unheard for 30 years in the Batcave. Because if the villain is right about the hero's darkness, then the heroism isn't simple anymore. The symbol has a crack in it. The story gets harder and more real and less comfortable. Teen Titans was a kids show that spent 4 seasons smuggling one of the most psychologically honest arguments in DC history into Saturday morning television. Slade Wilson, the villain, delivered it in small doses across dozens of episodes in language that sounded like manipulation because it came from the wrong mouth. He was right. Robin had darkness inside him. Robin was more like Slade than anyone admitted. And Robin became who he was supposed to be, not by proving that wrong, but by proving it survivable. Slade saw all of that coming in season 1. The rest of us needed 4 seasons of evidence to catch up. Drop it in the comments. Did Robin ever fully escape Slade's influence? Or is the darkness Slade named still running under every version of Nightwing we've seen since? Hit like, subscribe, because this story has a longer shadow than 1 season.